All right, here we are with the Huckleberry Rag and 400 years of Western European, African, American history in a moment after we play the music. So, all right. 1, 2, 3. All right, and I very admittedly skipped the ending on this, which if you're looking at the notation, involves shifting up to third position, and that's a separate lesson in its own right. But let's talk about rags and where all of this comes together.
Yeah, so ragtime came towards the very, very beginning of this jazz music that was coming out. And jazz music came from the old country blues, where there wasn't really a form to the blues. You know, nowadays we have 12 or 16 bars and other types of blues forms. But this was just, you know, people just singing their hearts out, singing their pains, and just going on for that. So when ragtime came around, this was around the time when this oral tradition of like country blues was mixing with like European classical music theory. So where they these African Americans were taking all these feelings and this soul and then adding these really, really fun chords. You know, most of the time in blues, or in blues specifically, we got the 1 chord and the 4 chord and the 5 chord. And here, as you might have heard me play a little bit, we were playing way more than 3 chords.
And your left hand was moving around just
a lot more than I'm used to.
It sounded good. And this even has kind of the very, I think in country and bluegrass, a lot of times you're seeing the 4-5-1. But in jazz, a lot of times you're doing like a 2-5-1, which you'll tell us more about in the jazz module, which is so exciting because it's easy for people who play a lot of fiddle tunes to think of jazz as being very complicated. But actually, we're just kind of swapping out the 4 chord with the 2 chord, and we're doing it a lot.
Yeah, substitutions all over the place.
I love it. So when I was lucky to visit Paris last year, I came up from the subway, and there's this like phenomenal black banjo player playing ragtime in this way that was nothing I had ever seen in American country music or bluegrass music. But the fact is that it existed because the banjo player comes from Africa. We've got ragtime.
Well, and banjo comes from Africa.
Right.
It's an African instrument.
It's phenomenal what we don't know that we should. So I love the idea of taking ragtime and blues and applying some new skills that I have acquired over the last couple of years and making this a bridge to what will become our jazz module. So in the blues, you take the scale. I know this much, and I know it works really well in bluegrass. You take the 3rd degree of the scale, and you lower it, and that's like your pain. And then you can take the 7th degree of the scale and lower it, and you can shake out a little bit more pain and dissonance in that. So a lot of, like, Alison Krauss uses that tool.
You hear this in all music nowadays.
Over and over
Everybody
and over.
uses it.
Yeah, the lower 3rd and the lower 7th. And they can be hard to hear if it's not something that you're used to. So I advise if the way that I came to the lower 7th, that was a really hard one for me to hear. I would start a solo on the lower 7th And then I could get back, kind of like the kitten in the tree scenario. I could climb back to comfort from that. So there's a tool if you're wondering how to do this. It's like, well, in an improvised solo, start on that lowered degree of the scale. Here's a D scale. We've got Huckleberry Rag in the key of D. But we know that that's not really what's happening, right? So I can hit that. Blues note.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did what you did right there. Because when we talk about the blues note, it's not just a perfect lowered third. It's kind of in between the minor third and the major third. It's that's where we get that feeling and that pain from it, just sliding up just a little bit from the minor third.
Purposefully and perfectly out of tune.
Exactly what you said.
And then we can do the same thing on the C. So an interesting thing to do would be to practice a blues scale, right? And play both the lowered third and the regular third and the lower seventh and the regular seventh. And you'll tell us more about that in the jazz module, I assume. So let's do the Huckleberry Rag now. I'm going to really mess with some blues notes. They're already written in the notation. There are a ton of F natural and F sharp, but I'm going to add some C natural in there as well, or like Blake said, some kind of microtonal thing in there that is very difficult to notate, but really fun to feel and play. So Huckleberry Rag with the blues notes. 1, 2, 3, 4.